All right, we're about to start. Well, good morning, everybody. Yes, it is Wednesday, the 14th of September, and we're coming to you from the Smart Procurement in Indaba in Midrand, and really keen to be able to do this. We're hoping that the technology is going to work out for us. We've got a couple of guests lined up, but just briefly to first take you through some perspectives of the conference. Let's see if we can get this to work properly. It's quite a lot that has been put together. I mean, there is a bunch of workshops they had on Monday, masterclasses that they had Monday. There is an expo which is on the go. I'm going to share a little bit with you on that expo shortly. There is also a APMP conference, which is running alongside this. For those who don't know, we will have Larissa come online towards the end of the hour, and she will just share with us a little bit about that. Now, those are the people that develop tenders, okay? And there's a group of people, I was astounded how many people there are that are professional tender developers and producers. There was an SMME conference which was sponsored by APSA, a bunch of SMMEs that attended that. There is the Public Sector Supply Chain Summit, which is running alongside this. There is one also for private sector corporate sourcing and supply management. And then there are post-event workshops which are happening on Thursday. There are 4 of those workshops. So just to give you a sense of the exhibition and what's going on, it's a number of suppliers and it's people, stakeholders in the space that are at the exhibition. It really good to see the number of people that are supporting the exhibition this year. And Henry Carlson kindly just went around and took some videos of this earlier, and we'll just share some of this then with you. Let's see, there's another one here of a number of SMMEs were sponsored and were given an opportunity to exhibit and just promote their products and services, which was a really good initiative. And then there's the normal, sponsored sponsors. The large organizations are here. BP Southern Africa is here. SAP is here. The software company. So a number of them that are here. So we're gonna kick off, and just to share with you the master classes that ran on Monday. The one that we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about is just the legislation update, the Masterclass 3. And Rodney Millman is here, and he was one of a number of officials that were there. And the workshop was very well received. So we'll chat to Rodney about that shortly. But you can see there were the different masterclasses. And I think let's actually stop on that now, and let's maybe just go straight then to, let me see if we were getting this all working properly. Straight then to Mr. Harry Michaud. Now, for those who don't know Mr. Michaud, he is the Provincial Chief Procurement Officer. Is that your title? Provincial Chief Procurement Officer at Northwest. And I've been very impressed with what the Northwest team have been doing, and their commitment to capacity development, and very nice to see Western Cape and Northwest shaking hands there. So we're going to kick off and I'm going to ask Harry if he wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about, Harry, firstly, I mean, your impression of the conference and the summit and just your overall impression, and then we can start to talk through some more of the details. You might need to come forward a little bit,
okay,
so that the guys can hear you.
No, thanks, Sean. My name is Erin Michaud. I'm from Northwest Provincial Treasury as the head of Northwest Provincial Supply Chain Management. My overall impression of the conference is that at least for this year, we, like any other years that we had the conference, we had quite bespoke speakers on a program, and then we've been sharing international insights into supply chain. Some of those insights we might be able to use them or utilize them within the public space of procurement. But they will talk about the details in terms of what we have learned and what I've observed in terms of the key issues of supply chain that relates to public sector procurement, that we can start implementing or thinking about developing some frameworks which are more into the legal framework of the public procurement, because it's not always easy to implement some of these methods or some of the principles of private procurement in a space that we are in, because our space is more regulatory in terms of the public procurement, but we'll talk about that later.
So Harry, I mean, we're in day 2 of the 2-day conference. Yesterday we had a theme up front on combining global and local procurement in public sector. That was a panel discussion. Young Zonder, he ran that one. There was a presentation by Liesel Groenewald on the whistleblower house, and whistleblowing, always interesting and often concerning as well. There was a bit of a case study that Thandi Pino went through just on dealing with politicians in the procurement space, and then Stephen Powell on the F word. So some insights that you perhaps picked up yesterday on some of those talks.
Thanks, Sean, again. I think one of the main, or the theme of the summit, it was think global and act local. And then from there, in terms of the interactions that we had with the different speakers, I've learned that our economy could definitely be changed by the government procurement spend if we use it effectively and efficiently within government, especially that we can make more savings within government space, because everybody's been saying government does not have money, but I don't think as government we do enough to ensure that we stretch the rent that we have within our budget, and also looking at the issues of physical leaks within our systems, especially when it comes to the presentation that was done by Stephen Powell, whereby he spoke about the issue of single sourcing, how the government or the corruption within the state capture manifested in terms of procurement. And some of these issues are not necessarily within procurement, they are beyond procurement. After the award has been done, some of these contracts have been exploited in terms of extension of contract, variations of contracts to the benefit of certain individuals, using fronting, especially in terms of the SMMEs, which don't do any work or create any value or add any value into the procurement or the contract management, but they were paid huge sums of money that they never worked for. Therefore, what I'm saying is that we can have a lot of savings within government if we can start to act more efficiently in terms of utilizing government resources, in terms of ensuring that at least we implement all our policies of supply chain effectively, because I think that's where we really need to put our focus on. There's some of the lessons that we learned going forward, and the exploitation of the single source, because these are the daily challenges that we experience in our space as public procurement. because I do realize that some of these principles are much easier done within the private sector, but they're not easily done in a public space because we utilize in government the taxpayers' money and Section 217. Therefore, we cannot just implement single source unilaterally. We need to apply those principles that are enshrined in the Constitution in terms of Section 217 and all the SCM prescripts and legislation in terms of appointing people on the single source. We also acknowledge that the single source, it can be utilized to come up with innovative solutions, like in human settlement space, whereby we can look at different building materials, at least to stretch the rent and achieve providing houses to our ordinary citizens or to our people. But those things, we need to create some framework for public sector whereby we can implement those things easily. There's a single source prescript within the public sector, but it's a more tedious process. And then I think most of the SCM practitioners, they don't want to get into the space. They are more comfortable in terms of just following up the normal way you have been doing procurement, just advertising the bid, not looking at creating a space in terms of the functional criteria, looking at innovative solutions going forward. Thank you.
So Harry, I think one of the things I took out of that was if I was doing something corrupt, I would be very concerned. I mean, Stephen received an international award and recognition for the work that he's been doing. And he said the kinds of technology they got in place now that can uncover the fraudulent activity would be concerning to anybody who was involved in anything corrupt-wise. Mr. Michaud, just let's move on to the legislation. And we're going to get a bit more of an update from Rodney shortly about that. But maybe just kick off, the $1 million question is, when do you think the public procurement bill is going to be enacted and then effective? Any perspectives you want to, are you a betting person on this one?
Thanks, John. That's a very difficult question to answer, but thank very much that we have Rodney, my colleague here beside me. He works very closely with National Treasury. He might give us an insight in terms of when will that be enacted. But I suspect that it might be early next year, not basically this year.
I think early
next year, this second quarter of next year. Maybe we might have something on the table.
And then effective? Because there's still a bunch of regulations that need to happen.
Effective from the 2024 financial year, effectively from the 1st of April 2024 financial year. But it's going to be very difficult instrument to implement in government, especially that when you look at the reorganization of the whole supply chain, because it's going to involve the reorganization of supply chain, it's going to involve change management. It's not only going to be a simple thing to do,
I mean, there's the whole restructuring of the regulator.
Yes.
The National Treasury's restructuring. And then if we could just move on to 26, 27 January 2023, the preferential procurement regulations 2017 die on that day, and things need to be in place. What are some of the things that you've been doing in Northwest to prepare for that? And one of the questions is that many are asking is, are you thinking about developing a model preferential procurement policy for the departments and the entities in Northwest? So what's some of the work you're doing to prepare for that that milestone?
Fortunately for us, we have come up with some frameworks in the past that we have been trying to implement in Northwest. And those frameworks we have been consulted extensively. So with the legislature in Northwest, basically the state law advisors in the office of the Premier, through with ESCO, and also with the heads of the SCM and the HODs previously, because we're not going to start from scratch. But we had a meeting, SCM forum, with National Treasury and with other treasuries, whereby we're going to develop a draft, at least for each province. And then that draft will be discussed at a bigger forum, which is the CP, which is led by the CPO at national level, whereby we'll be looking at different drafts from different provinces and try to come up with one pieces of framework or advice in terms of how to implement this thing. But it's not going to be difficult, because I suppose that most of the provincial treasuries have worked on this document for a while now. Therefore, it's not going to be a traceback. The issue is, when are we going to finalize it for implementation beyond January 2023? I think that's what we need to work towards now, to work from that last date and coming back and see if we're going to be able to issue that before January 2023.
Because it's not just the model policy that you need to develop, that then needs to be taken by the departments, because 2.1 of the Preferential Procurement Policy Framework Act says the organ of state must determine.
Yes.
So you'll put a model policy together, which then needs to be determined at an organ of state level. And I think that might be, you know, the critical path then. Hey, you got to get that out to them so that they could consider that, they can then apply it and develop their policy before and be ready by the 27th of January.
Yes. And to shorten that process, Sean, that is why I'm saying that we have been engaging with the heads of supply chain and with the accounting officers in the province regarding that, so that when we start consulting on the one that we would have agreed with other treasuries and the national treasury, it is going to be easier for them to start adapting whatever we would have agreed upon with national treasury and the other treasuries as a model policy going forward. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Michaud, and thank you. And good to hear that you're working on it, and you're consulting and you're applying your mind to that, because this is an important opportunity, right? Yeah. I mean, we're going to be judged, right? Our family, our children are going to judge us by the outcomes that we achieve through this process. So good, thank you. We're going to move across to Rodney, and so let's get Rodney on the camera there. Morning, Rodney. Rodney Millman, from all the way from Western Cape. Rodney, you've got a lot of experience in the space. You're one of the senior people that we know and have respected for the work you've been doing. Thank you for that. We're going to ask you a personal question just now. Your focus down there is primarily on local government, but I know you play a very significant role in Western Cape Provincial Treasury. And maybe just to kick off firstly with your impressions of the conference and the seminar, and then we can talk a little bit about your workshop on Monday. Let me see if I get this mic across there to you.
Thanks so much. Right. I think from where I'm sitting, if I look at all the topics, keynote address and the panel discussions, it's very relevant for what is going on in our country now. I think the whistleblowing is one key thing that came up from the Zonder Commission report. Obviously, everything that's centered around the two investigations that was key on the local government side with the SRU reports, a lot of things were said in terms of protecting whistleblowers and how do we now institute certain provisions to make it easy. And I think we were on the button in terms of our topics. I'm very encouraged to see that we have very relevant stuff in terms of looking at the local economy. And with the new reforms coming, you need another breed of practitioners in the public sector that is key focus on the local economy and not just about the normal way and the conventional way of doing work. I think the overall sort of impression that I got is that the things are quite relevant now, the topics that we have and the discussions that we have. And I think Stephen Paul made some good suggestions in terms of what we need to have. And one of the key things for me and what we do in our province, we're very strong on the technology part. And even in this morning's breakfast, I'm really encouraged by our prof. I want to hunt him down and have a chat to him about machine learning and AI. We've just started in our province using it extensively in our e-procurement solutions and what we are doing. And we are already seeing the value of it, because we can actually halve our amount of people even in our walk-in center because of the capabilities of technology, and put them in other spaces where we can actually use them more efficiently and effectively. And I think even the masterclass has really challenged all of us in making sure that we prepare ourselves adequately for what is going to come. So my sincere congratulations to the organizers. I think we got it right this year. Yeah.
So let's stay on that masterclass. And what are the key messages or the key points that you have?
Right. It was Mr. Frans Abad from the Gauteng Provincial Treasury, Chief Director. He also was my co-presenter in the masterclass, and it was quite nice to see the Gauteng story and the Western Cape story coming together and sharing our experience for the benefit of the candidates that were sitting there in our class. It was an absolute pleasure just sharing the stage with them as well.
So what were some of the messages?
So we were delving into a lot of things. First and foremost, the governance context in South Africa and how things are being moving. In the Western Cape, we are used to the fact that we see this developments as waves in procurement. And we said we stopped at the fourth wave, and the fifth wave with the new reforms is coming. And even challenging ourselves, what is the requisite skills and competencies that is needed for these reforms? I think that for me is very, very important. So we went into the governance context. We also went into the disaster dispensation, because I think post-COVID, it was very important to kind of go back and see what we have done well, where we didn't do so well, where we could have done better. I asked the class, did you ever see so much of circulars being issued and retracted at the same time? And that was the answer to how we suddenly were so strangulated and couldn't do our work as we normally do, because I think the inefficiencies just came to the surface, and we were able to look at ourselves and say that we're not happy. And so we delved into a little bit of the learnings, and also challenge ourselves, and also the National Treasury, that there's a distinct difference between the crisis that we have from time to time and a full-blown disaster as we had with COVID-19. And international practice has shown us, and the Western Cape has done a little bit of research on this, that we need another dispensation for disaster. And it's called overseas a disaster procurement policy. For a new dispensation. And the example that I made in the class, if we have a tsunami here in Gauteng today, and we can't switch on one computer in government, and the services is needed for our communities to clean up and do a lot of things, medical things, what are we going to do? Are we ready? It's a rapid onset of a disaster. You might have a slower one where you can do certain things, and you can categorize your disaster, and you can build it into your policies, and you can have central procurement advisory committee sitting there in the middle of Gauteng, the middle of Northwest, in the middle of Western Cape, just guiding the province and even municipalities in terms of what they need to do. But those things, you need to get your policy in place, have that dispensation that everybody understands it, every practitioner, every manager, and then go the normal route. And if it is so that we get one procurement law for 3 spheres of government, and we did not look short at disaster in itself, we missed the opportunity, because this is not the first and last time that we have a disaster in South Africa. And then we went into the Zonder Commission recommendations, and we did a bit of analysis in the Western Cape, and I shared it with the class in terms of what would work in terms of the report. And the key thing for us is that we cannot throw a regulation or law to everything that goes along in South Africa in procurement. We are strangulating ourselves by doing that. So we need to have a distinct difference what we put into our regulatory environment and what we keep outside in terms of our policy domain. And I think for me, that is key. There are some very good recommendations by the Commissioner that we need to have a look at. And we made some suggestions in terms of the governance things that are there for us to make sure at the end of the day that we implement those things going forward. I think very, very importantly, as we gauge to our new dispensation around the reforms, is what is it that we need to do to kind of implement all of these things simultaneously. Then I went into the SIU report for our province and shared a little bit of the findings of the SIU. And how is it that even municipalities must gear themselves for recommendations that came up from it. One key thing that we realized, even during COVID, because remember the SIU report focused on PPE procurement, is, yes, yeah, and that was the key focus with the recommendations made to us. And we could go back to municipalities. And the key thing was that there was not just a hunt down for the practitioners sitting in municipalities, but the SIU made clear recommendations to the NPA regarding civil litigation against the companies as well, which I think is a step in the right direction. And then we went a little bit into some of the examples of what has happened in the PPPFA, the inefficiencies that rise in there, the skills that's needed. We actually broke up the team into smaller little groups so that they can discuss it and that they could see to what extent are they ready if it is promulgated tomorrow. And the date we don't know. 2022. Right. So we went into a little bit in terms of what is there in the draft, the timelines, the preparation for that. And we shared a little bit in terms of our meeting with the OCPO about a month ago with regard to that and what was indicated to us. And I think it was mentioned at the joint meeting as well, that there is a proposal from them that they separate the promulgation date from the implementation date. And that they would soon make that announcement with regard to it. And we asked them, where are we at this point in time? So I think the draft was at the senior state law advisor for comments and inputs. And we are awaiting, I think within the next 2 weeks, the Western Cape will now meet the new CPO and have further engagement regarding this and making sure that we are adequately prepared for what is going to come. There's a lot of work that has already gone into it. We do have an approved Western Cape preferential procurement policy for the entire province. So we're not going to start as Northwest from scratch. I think the key principles is already instilled there. All that we're going to do is to tweak what we believe is necessary now at this point in time, looking at the rates and building key principles within that as well. And I think that would cut across provincial and the local sphere of government. So it was very interactive. I tell you, the class was very active in terms of how they struggled. One key thing that came out was the struggle regarding the one from 2012, which is local content and production. So I went back to 2012 and then played it back for them and then took them a little bit further in terms of what has now happened with local content and production. And we were very active, had similar sort of sessions with the DTIC and National Treasury. And there's a special work group now to kind of look. And I think from where DTI is sitting, they were also not so happy in terms of those provisions not being in the regs that's going to come. And what does that mean? Because local content production ultimately for our economy is very important, but how are we going to do it? There's various of proposals that's on the table. I trust that we will now pull in all of the provincial treasuries into this discussions going forward. And there's a lead team already in place to look at those things. So basically we went and delved into a lot of things simultaneously, very interactive and very encouraging that we got the people to think for the very first time. If it hits us, what are the missing parts? And especially the skills and competencies that we're going to need in the public sector.
Thanks, Rodney. And so just to check from a Western Cape perspective, same question, are you also putting a model policy together for your departments? And sounds like you're pretty far advanced as far as that's concerned, the preferential procurement policy. And then you shared with me just something personal. You're going to be moving off sometime, is that right? And you're going to be into consulting on your own, and know you've got a lot to offer. So all the best to you on that one. But maybe just come back to that question around the policy.
I think the policy, Sean, is very, very important for all of our provinces, and rightfully so, as just indicated, that we must share it across the entire country in terms of those key principles that should be in there. So if I can remind you, it's no different to what we already have, because there's a multitude of things that the National Treasury simultaneously must look. And it's not just about the procurement law, it's about the NTRs that's there. It's about the regulations on the municipal side. It's about all the circuits, all the instructions regarding that. And there's a multitude of things that the National Treasury have to look at. But very importantly, what we have done in the province is to put, when we had all of these reforms previously, for our departments, and we shared that even with our municipalities, we had what we call an accounting officer system, which is that takes into consideration the NTRs and the PFM and all those provisions as a blueprint for all of our departments. Then we would ask accounting officers to look at the blueprint, to customize, because remember, we have different supply chains at different departments. We have a Department of Education that is very logistically driven. And then we have a Department of Transport and Public Works that is very infrastructure driven. So we have different supply chains, and they must be able to tweak and customize those policies. Sean, it would be no different to the triple PFA. As much as there's going to be a blueprint, they must still customize, and they must still adopt it and sign off on it as an entity as prescribed by the National Treasury.
I'm going to quickly just check if there is anyone online who's maybe got a question before we just asked you guys to come through for a short while. So let's just see if there's anyone who's got a question for Mr. Michaud, Mr. Mulman. If nice to have both provinces here. Yeah, any questions?
Sean, can you hear me?
Yes, hi, Ron. So Ron Grace. Yeah, go ahead, Ron, and they can't hear you, but I'll convey it to them. Go ahead.
The Western Cape's preferential procurement policy, on the internet, there's a 2000 version publicly available. Is there an update? What is the latest version? What is the date of it? You can get it.
Right. So the question from Mr. Ron Grace, National Research Foundation, is there's a 2000 version of the Western Cape preferential procurement policy. Is there an update? Is it available? Can it be shared? Where could they find it?
Some work has been done on it, but what we normally do is that we take it through our different structures on a provincial level, and also to take it eventually to our provincial cabinet. When we have worked on it, this is the procedures that we will follow. So it's not available as yet. There's still a lot of work that we must do on that. And then at this point in time, what we have done to maximize the time around it is to have different meetings with different structures within the province, municipal managers, CFOs, SEM managers, and simultaneously doing that on the provincial side as well. We spend with the municipalities about 2 days just discussing and unpacking what has happened, how to adequately prepare, and what we encourage the National Treasury, as we have done in 2011 and in 2017, is to have a national roll-off of the triple PFA, and then go to each and every province within a roadshow methodology and make sure that the message is consistent to each of the province. And we said that we will duplicate that. Once that national one is out, we will do a provincial roadshow. And our province has already packaged that and just waiting the promulgation as far as the triple PFA is concerned. So we've got an entire package that we want to take to provincial departments and municipalities.
Thanks. So Ron, it doesn't sound like it's publicly available yet. And it sounds like the provinces are all doing their own. And then that's probably quite in-house at the moment. That then is going to be shared. And we're going to try and talk with the National Treasury lady who's going to be here later today. And we'll try and get a bit of an update from them as well. Mamanea and Indaba, you can unmute. I don't know if I got your...
Hi.
Yeah, hi, go ahead.
Yes. You got my name right. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you for this platform. Sorry I joined late. The gentleman from the Western Cape, this is not a question, but a request. This is very exciting that he's going privately to consult. So I would please like to send you my details, Sean, that I can exchange details with him, because I'm also working on a very interesting project. I also left the state to see what I can do with my skill as a contribution to really try and better our economy.
Good one. So Rodney, she's just saying she's very pleased to hear that you're going into private sector, and she'd love to be able to get your contact details. And so she'll send them through to me if I could just share that, and then just get you guys potentially working together. She's working on some interesting stuff and would love to collaborate. So we know you can do. Any other questions? And then if not, we're going to let these guys go off and attend the next session. And then fine. Thank you very much. So thank you. And well done to you for all the work you're doing, and good luck for the next couple of weeks. It's going to be an exciting time. Good luck. All the best to you, Rodney. And, thank you, Mr. Shah. Thank you. All right. So let's see. We're going to get some of the guys to come through now and just speak with us. So we've got gee whiz. Dr. Mgwenya is first up, and Dr. Mgwenya, please sit down, come through this side, and we're just going to quickly ask you. I think you have just arrived. I'm not sure if you've been here. You have been. You have been fantastic. We don't have the technology in place yet to be able to speak to everybody, so we'll just do a little bit of a chair shuffle as we go, but yeah, let's just quickly. Dr. Mgwenya, so I'm looking forward to the session we're going to have a bit later this morning on capacity development, but maybe just share some perspectives of the conference. How's it going? Some of the highlights from your side?
So far it's going quite well. I was part of the session on artificial intelligence, and I kind of liked it. It does dovetail into what I'll be saying a bit later, because my focus is purely, to some extent, it talks about how do we professionalize supply chain management with all the innovations that we have. I'll be talking about key things that I believe are game changers. And in our spirit, especially from the national treasury perspective and provincial perspective. That's the one aspect. The other aspect I think I'll be talking to will be the automation, the e-procurement story. But at a practical level, what is it that we're doing as a province? As you all know, we have now an established e-government whose mandate it is to drive cutting-edge technology. So, but there are practical things that we've done in terms of automating our processes and within the Gauteng provincial government. So I'll be talking to those kinds of issues. Thank you.
Good. So Dr. Mgwenya, I don't want to put you on the spot, and please just say if you're not sure what's happening in that respect, but what is Provincial Treasury doing in Gauteng to prepare for the 2017 regulations and that milestone we've got? Any thoughts to share? Because I know that's not exactly your space. Your space is more in the development side.
Yeah, but if you look at the developments to date, it's not about the regulations themselves. It's how they were implemented who was supposed to sign off. I think it's about that. I think the content and the spirit will be the same. It's a question of delegating downwards now. So I guess we'll pretty much do our work as we normally do. Look, the role of provincial trade is to make sure that all our entities and departments and the province at large does conform to that process. But I don't think content-wise, I'm not too worried personally. We will be doing it, but probably putting emphasis where we're required to do so.
Good. And maybe just to close off, what is going to be one of your key messages in the session later this afternoon on capacity development?
The key message is that when it gets to procurement and supply chain in general, we've got to up our game. We've got to make sure that we professionalize that discipline to a level that it enjoys the respect it deserves to have, because we cannot be talking about other professional bodies and we leave the core body, which is supply chain management. When AG comes, they inspect our finances and nothing else. So our message is take us seriously, guys. We are here to stay and we are going to make a difference, hopefully in the whole country.
Thanks, Dr. Ngwenya. And we're going to go across to Tandile Tlom, and nice to have you here. University of Johannesburg, and what for you has been the highlights of the conference so far?
Thank you, Sean. Thank you. No, definitely. Yesterday we started on a very good note on localization. When we went deep dive, discussing globalization and bringing it back at home on localization, meaning that we connect worldwide, but we promote our local products, meaning that we are doing business locally. So today, Nana, we are building capacity, because really, if you look at our jobs or in our spaces, it's about people, it's about resources, it's about systems. So once you have those in place, and then you are able to run your supply chain management. So my highlight has really been about local content, and today looking forward to discuss more, as Dr. Ngwenya has said, the professionalism, to professionalize our discipline. So we need to build more on that in terms of capacity and training our colleagues or team members so that they become professionals. We need to elevate where we are as SCM.
Thank you, Tony. I'm just going to ask you to swap then with Malakia, and Dr. John, just stay there. You're boxed in now, so we're not going to. Malakia is just joining us, and just going to see if we can get him on camera there. And you've got a lot of deep experience in provincial government, and what are some of the insights that you've picked up and some of the perspectives you've got?
Thanks, Sean, and thanks for having me here. Yesterday, the conference kicked off with the localization, where we need to really think or act globally, but think locally, And one started to wonder, how do you then strike the balance within the ambit of the current legislation within the public sector, more especially of going globally, because the initiative that the government has come with in terms of the local content and production, then it's quite key in terms of accelerating the companies or the SMMEs, making sure that they are entering the mainstream of economy, and even we create jobs, as we're aware that the country currently it's faced with the triple challenges, unemployment, poverty and inequality. So this is one of the initiatives, the local content and the local production that in a quest to make sure that they accelerate, that we we get there in terms of making sure that the companies are actually finding themselves in the mainstream of economy. But yesterday, really what I took home with, which was really an eye-opening. It was when my former colleague Tandi was speaking about her experience in terms of the political pressure that most of the supply chain officials find themselves confronted with. The issue of finding the balance between your employer or the politician and the mandate that are coming, from it's just that you need to find that balance and regard the politician as one of your stakeholders. So that lesson, really, it was an eye-opening, because we often, treat the politicians as as people who really we fear, and we are afraid to confront them with each. But if we treat them as our stakeholders, we are able to engage at a certain level with them and show them. One of my MEC once said to me, "I'm saying you must come here, but I didn't say you must pass the red robots." What she meant was that I'm giving you the instructions, but I'm not saying you must not observe the legislation or the rules of the game. So it is quite important that even if we are given those instructions, we still need to make sure that we abide by the book. Thank you very much.
Good one, and thank you. And we're going to ask you to swap there and get somebody to the next hot seat. So thank you, Dr. Mgwenya. And come through, Tabile. So Tabile Lange, all the way from the Western Cape, PPECB. And what have been some of the highlights for you of the conference so far?
Yeah, thank you very much, Sean, and also good morning to the colleagues. Sean, I think the two key takes for me from this conference was one on the local sourcing and also on the development of our local suppliers and manufacturers so that we can be able to reduce the imports. And I think that was the main key for me from yesterday's discussions. And the fact that the focus is more on developing our local suppliers and mills to make sure that there's more job creation and also the contribution to the economy. And the other thing also was more on the digitalization of procurement and the systems to make sure that we have the right systems, we have the right resources to be able to support the procurement initiative to create the value creation. Yeah, those are the key takes for me. And lastly, the personal touch with our suppliers as well and the supply matching. And just to understand what are the challenges that they having since COVID, what are the success stories that they can share, and also on our side, what opportunities are available as well.
Tabile, thank you. And what are you looking forward to for the rest of the day? And I don't know if you're attending any of the workshops tomorrow.
Yes, Sean, I think one key conference that I'm looking forward to is more on the support of the procurement officials from and the whistleblowers as well. I think that is the key one. And also I'll be attending some sessions tomorrow in a closeout session as well.
Thanks, Tabile. Thank you. And enjoy the rest of the conference and safe trip back to the Western Cape. And thank you. We're going to, thank you, Tabile. Just, we're going to take a very different perspective now. Come through, Larissa, and join us. Thank you for joining us. And so one of the conference streams that I said is running here is APMP. Is that right? APMP. Association of Proposal Management Professionals. I was astounded, I must tell you, when I saw how many of you were there, your annual conference, 100 or so people, Tell us a little bit about who you guys are, and then maybe just some perspectives from the conference. And thank you.
Thanks, Sean, for inviting me in. Thanks. So the Association of Proposal Management Professionals is a nonprofit organization, and we are really about professionalizing the growth of those who respond to tenders and proposals. So just like the public sector procurement is looking to professionalize their function, I've actually realized through this conference that we're really not that different. And I think we're very much in the same boat, right? We have to stay up to regulations. So yes, you might think it's suppliers you're dealing with, but often it's the sales guys and the suppliers that give it to their bid office or their teams or their administrators to put these responses together. And there's various best practices and regulations we need to stay up to date to put that information together. So that's really what we are about, is really helping suppliers and their teams who respond to their proposals and tenders really to professionalize that, make sure they're following best practices, make sure we're supporting against fraud, corruption, that there's the right sort of governance processes in there, and they're responding to the right deals.
So Larissa, just to clarify, I mean, there's a group of people who are professional proposal developers. This is their career, this is their profession, is that right?
Absolutely, and very much like procurement is starting to move into strategic roles, so we're finding the tender and the proposal professionals moving into a more strategic role. It's not just about filling in forms, it's now about making sure we're mitigating risks and governance within our organizations, helping to make sure that we're positioning ourselves effectively to win, because remember, tenders cost your suppliers money. And SMEs are even more infected to a larger degree, because you've obviously often got MDs and things that should be doing other business activities that are spending time on these tender activities. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of us, and we have an international certification for what we do.
Very good, very good. And you had some international people come over as well and join you in the conference. And so some insights, and remember you're talking now to public procurement people, some insight from your perspectives on what you've seen and what's going to be happening.
So I think the conference has been extremely eye-opening. I think first and foremost, it's really exciting that we get to have the conversation of buyers and suppliers together to get both perspectives. But we had Sean and Henry come and share with us quite a lot of information around the regulations that have changed. And I think that there is an overall sense from suppliers of a little bit of nervousness that, you know, that there may be different legislation coming in from the different organs of state and how that's potentially going to impact us. You know, is that a lot more regulations? What kind of communication or channels are we going to have to speak to your teams, to suppliers, to make sure that we understand? So I think there's a lot of challenges when we get to January. You know, I think it's clear the impact that, you know, there was a lot of sort of confusion and standstill in the public sector with all these changes that happened this year. And that impacted the supply side as well, because we obviously bids took a long time to be awarded or they got cancelled. And now with the changes coming through, I guess we're waiting to look forward to see what happens. But we are a little nervous about, you know, what kind of channels that might open up from, you know, potential fraud and corruption. I think there's a concern as well of, you know, just the conversations that might, you know, also suppliers potentially using it as a gap to take more opportunities to contest awards as well. So I think the best way for us potentially to avoid that is to have more open communications with each other and speak to the suppliers. So, and we understand the regulations that each organ of states brings when we're going into a tender requirement. And we've got to read those RFPs very carefully.
Thanks, Larissa. And yeah, I found it encouraging as well. And I think for those who are putting tenders together, there certainly would be a lot more value in, I think, collaborating and listening to those that are trying to respond professionally to the tenders that are put together from the site. So thank you. And successful conference for you guys. Some highlights coming up, because you're also having 2 days?
No.
You just had the 1 day. fantastic. And see, you've got a presence here, exhibition, and fantastic. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. And thank you. There we are, folk. Thank you. I'm going to quickly just see if there's any perspectives. I see that Bernie van Niekerk is, now Bernie doesn't know, but he's going to come and take the hot seat here. And I'm going to ask him to just quickly, hey, welcome Bernie, come and sit down. And we're live at the moment. And so maybe just share with us, Bernie, how's it going? I mean, this is, hang on a second, I'm going to give you the mic shortly. But just share with us, how many years has this been going? And just some perspectives on the conference and the whole Indaba this time.
Well, as you've noticed, it's a complete catastrophe, and nobody's ever going to come again. So no, just joking. It's been fantastic, this particular event. I think it's really awesome after this hiatus where people couldn't attend physical events to now get together and actually meet physically. It's been awesome, and I think this particular year, more than other years, we're very glad to see the seniority level of people who've come to the conference and who've made it a priority to get here. The conference itself started out in 2004 when we had the first one. So it's 18 years later now. Yeah. And it started out at 2003, we launched Smart Procurement, the magazine. And then the year after, we launched Smart Procurement from a conferencing perspective.
Bernie, maybe some perspectives on just this morning's breakfast, and who was there, what was the target, what was the purpose?
Well, it's an annual Chief Procurement Officers event, and so we had 100 leaders who came together, and the idea is to present one or two topics that's really relevant to this audience at this particular point in time. And we had a presentation by a marketplace called Duka. And very interestingly, in 2000, this idea of marketplaces went global. There was Commerce One, who had a marketplace, a mining marketplace. Then there was an energy marketplace, of which Sasol was the founder. And then later on, as things migrated, the e-procurement software actually just became another piece of software. But it wasn't the whole marketplace idea was not really implemented further, where you have a single marketplace where multiple companies could go into it. So nowadays you would find that you have a company and they have a company marketplace, but you don't have a single marketplace in the middle. And so that idea, which is actually 20 years old, is finally revived again. But the idea is that they want to make the procurement as easy as business to consumer procurement. If you go onto the Amazon site, as an example, it has so many different ways in which it interacts with you. And they're trying to make that process of interaction from a buyer's perspective as easy as that, but then linked to a common base. So that was one of the important topics we discussed. And then the second one was, if you think of this globalization idea,
Just unpack that word first, because
globalization, which is think global but act local. Yeah. So the idea there is that we are obviously in a globalized environment, and you still got to do what you do in the South African market. And what came out very strongly is this globalization trend is being adjusted because of risks that have happened. Firstly, COVID had a massive impact on supply chains, and people realized that you cannot necessarily depend on people who are, 11 hours away. You actually need local supply in many cases. And so a lot of supply chains globally are being restructured to move away from global suppliers like China, for example, not necessarily for kind of the Trump agenda to try to say create work in America, but the idea that you would invest in your local market because it's a risk management. It's important from a risk management perspective. And so that came through very, very strongly. And at the same time, when you look at the most recent issues with the war in Ukraine, the same kind of thing is happening, where people were dependent on Ukraine for wheat and so forth. South Africa is importing a lot of wheat. It's importing chickens. And with that source drying up now, we're paying through our noses for wheat. And so what I really found interesting is this idea of, yes, it's globalization, but it's actually less globalization and more localization, because people are trying to manage the risk. And the tie into that is to say, well, because people are now going to be investing in the local environment, there's far more opportunities for local economic development, that's coming downstream because of that. So that was very interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Bernie, and well done to you and the team for putting the conference together. And success with this conference. And is there going to be one next year?
Well, is the sun going to shine tomorrow? If that's the case, then there's a very good chance we'll have one.
Thanks, Bernie. All the best. All right, everybody. We're going to. Thanks, Bernie. You're welcome to go through and so Bernie's got a question for me. He's going to tackle me after this discussion. So there we are. We're at 11 o'clock, and well done to all of you who have joined us. And I see we've had a good number of people. Any questions to close off on? And if not, then thank you everybody for joining us. Hope you found that interesting. Hello, Ron.
Sean, just a quick question. Is it possible to get the contact details of the last two presenters, the AP, the proposals?
The proposals person and Bernie, we can certainly do that. And let me send out an email with the contact details of everybody that we had on. It will be good, and we'll do that. From my apologies to those of you who frustratingly have seen that I didn't turn the chat on today, because that would have been an easy one. But we'll certainly do that, and we'll get those details out. Thank you. Thanks, Ron. Good.
Just two quick things. So Bernie spoke about e-procurement. We at the NRF are trying to find an e-procurement expert in South Africa. If anybody on the forum knows who to contact, who's a national expert, so we'd love to hear from you. It's Ron Grace, rd.grace@nrf.ac.za. And then, Sean, if I can shamelessly use this platform to just mention, we have an advert running for a specifications manager at the NRF. So please look at our website if you know of anybody who's interested, particularly relevant to professions like engineers. So please apply if you know, if you feel you can, or if you know anybody else you can pass it on to. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Ron. All right, thank you. Any other questions from anyone? Hope you found this of interest. And have a look at the smartprocurement.com website, I think it is. Smart Procurement. If you do a search for Smart Procurement, you'll find it. And for those that missed out this year, I was impressed to see the number of public procurement people that actually made an effort to attend from across the country. And if you can, put this in your schedule for next year and your budget for next year, that would certainly be valuable. You would find this of significant value. Thanks, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next Wednesday. We'll confirm as soon as we can who it is that we're going to have and what the topic will be for next week. All the best, everybody.